Welcome back. You're watching Business AM. My name is Nina Shaban, sitting in for Simba Elijah Charles Kiage. And to help us carry through the discussion today, we're joined by Joanne Mwaniki, the only other lady in the panel, or rather in this discussion. She's a financial consultant, Tommy Randall, a policy analyst, Alex Ndagwar, a lawyer, and Erastus Madana, who is an economic analyst and electronic engineer. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Okay. All right. Now, on a report.
Good morning.
Good morning. On a report by the Business Daily, Kenya Power has appointed Vivian Nyada as the new chairperson of the company's board of directors, effective November, or rather the 13th of November 2020. Vivian Nyada, Kenya Power's first female board chair, will take the helm from Mahmoud Makim, the outgoing chairperson. And speaking on the appointment, the immediate outgoing chairperson expressed his confidence in the new board to steer the company to growth and sustainability. Vivian Nyada doubles as the Director General, East African Development Bank. She holds a Master's of Business from Edith Cowan University and a Master in International Finance from the University College London. She also served as a non-executive director in Kenya Power since July 2020. Her tenure as chair comes at a time when the company is struggling with losses and mounting debt. Its debt for the period up to June 2020 has hit 47.85 billion shillings, where the company's unaudited results for the period to June 2020 show a loss of 2.98 billion shillings, its first loss in 17 years. Now, the unaudited results are yet to be published. So we start off with this. The company is also facing challenges in collecting from defaulters who owed up to 5.2 billion shillings as of December 2019. Clearly, the job is cut out for her. What new measures can we expect to be streamlined within this institution? Maybe you can start off with Randall. Talk to us.
One of the things they can do is what I've seen them actually do is push people to prepaid service. Prepaid service where you top up tokens. Mm-hmm. This way, in future, you don't have to go after customers who have big bills. Also, they need to restructure the deals they have with the electricity, the people who provide to them electricity, because they have a lot of electricity that is not being used, and they have to pay for whatever they get from the suppliers. Those are just a few of the measures that they can put into place.
Mm-hmm. All right, and looking at her former employer and as a Director General, how can Kenya Power drive its partnership in public-private partnerships within the region?
Well, there's a project where there's a last mile project that they have, which involves public participation and it involves private investors subsidized by the government. That's one of the few things that they should roll out and educate more consumers so that most people can take advantage of that opportunity, mm-hmm. and that way they can show up on their losses as well.
All right. And I'd like to hear also from either Joanne or Alex or Erastus. So the power distributor is banking on a 20% hike in a pending tariff review to increase revenues to cushion the company from drops in demand, supply defaults, and cover the cost of its capital-intensive projects. What's your take on this?
Maybe I can start on that. I think in an economy where things are basically at a standstill, mm-hmm. I think it's not prudent for KPLC to increase its tariffs by 20%. I think it would rather be more prudent for the company to look at minimizing loss of power through transmission by vandalization and such kind of areas, as opposed to just generally increasing their income base and not focusing on reducing the leakages that are in the system at the moment. That will be pushing Kenyans to spend more on power, and at the moment the economy is at a standstill, or rather not doing very well.
All right.
That would be my take for myself.
All right. Erastus, I'd like to hear from you. What is your take when it comes to the distributor banking on a 20% hike in a pending tariff review to increase revenues to cushion the company from drops in demand? Okay, that's quite unfortunate. I cannot hear you. Alex, could you give us your take kindly?
Well, I think, first of all, I think let's not forget that 54% of the consumption of electricity in this country can be attributed to only about 700 high-consuming, commercial and industrial companies operating in Kenya. And most of them, because of the increased prices in electricity, have started shifting towards renewable energy, which in as much as Kenya Power would want to collect as much from them, and considering that the activities have gone down because of COVID-19, I don't think a hike in tariff is really going to lead to any substantial increase in revenue, because most of these players are operating on very thin margins. So then they'll be forced, or they'll have to make changes to how they consume their power and start moving to renewable energy. And we started seeing some of the high consuming players in the market start moving towards that direction. So I think it's going to be a slap in the face, and I think Kenya Power should be concentrating on expanding their revenue streams, such as using all the data that they've been collecting. That data could be used for a lot of stuff, such as credit rating. And I think, as what Tommy Randall really pointed out, that a really, really huge problem is that KRA has entered into all these PPAs with private power producers, and now they are stuck with a lot of power that cannot be consumed by the market. So I think there's a lot to be done in resolving that relationship between KPLC and independent power producers.
All right, well, thank you very much, Alex. Before we move on to our next topic, Erastus, I'd like to hear your view.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you very well now. My question to you was, the power distributor is banking on a 20% hike in a pending tariff review to increase revenues to cushion the company from drops in demand, supplier defaults, and cover the cost of its capital-intensive projects. What is your take on this, especially as we continue fighting the pandemic? What is your take economically? Is this safe for the nation?
Personally, I don't believe that increasing the costs is going to make any significant impact. So if our KPLC, I would rather go for maybe more connections, more connection. If they penetrate a bigger market, they increase their customer base, and then they lower the pricing. I think that one will generate more income for them.
All right, now on to our next topic of discussion, ladies and gentlemen. Safaricom and commercial banks are seeking a deal with the Central Bank of Kenya, CBK, to avoid a unilateral regulatory extension of free M-Pesa and mobile banking transactions amid the spike in COVID-19 cases in the country. Now, the telecommunications firm and the banks are pushing for the CBK to involve them should the regulator decide to extend the tenure of free transactions beyond the end of December. The CBK announced that the removal of charges on M-Pesa transactions of up to 1,000 shillings from the 16th of March until the 30th of June, a period when bank-to-mobile phone transactions would also be free. The regulator later made a unilateral decision to extend the relief measures until the 31st of December 2020, drawing protests from Safaricom and banks who have lost billions of shillings on the free service. The relief measures on mobile phone payments were introduced to encourage cashless payments on mobile phones as part of the efforts to contain the spread of the coronavirus. Safaricom's chief executive Officer Peter Ndegwa said that the telco was in advanced talks with the CBK over the resumption charges on low-value M-Pesa transactions. Now, Safaricom reckons that the free M-Pesa transfer cost, it costed 9 billion shillings in the 6 months to June, which saw the firm report a 6% drop in net profit to 33.07 billion, the first fall in 9 years. Now, Joanne, let's start off with listening to your take. We are undergoing a pandemic, a crisis, a whole nation at large, where almost every institution has reduced their charges. Why should Safaricom and banks go ahead in an aim of avoiding a unilateral regulatory extension of free M-Pesa and mobile banking transactions amid the spike in COVID-19 cases in the country?
In my assessment, I think for these institutions, Safaricom and the banks, transactions are one of their key revenue builders. So, of course, in the last few months, they have seen their revenues drop as a result of free transaction charges. And everybody's fighting to remain afloat at this particular point in time during the COVID season. Of course, they are fighting to retain their market prices. And therefore, they feel that if they continue to reduce their tariffs on transactions, then their revenue goes down, and of course their profits go down, and in effect the prices also will dip. So for me, I think it's a survival strategy for them, because this is where their key revenues are coming from. That is my perspective.
All right, Alex?
I think maybe just 3 quick key points is, number one is the fact that, we are a free market economy, and the regulator come in to unilaterally police how, a private entity is charging its services. I think that's something that we really ought to be very careful about. And I love that they are in advanced talks. I think that is way much better, where there's collaboration between the private players and the regulators, because at the end of the day, we get a win-win approach. But just taking a unilateral approach to intervene in how private companies operate, then I really don't think that is the best way to go. And and the government as a major shareholder, that's something that they can always push within the existing corporate governance systems if they want, Safaricom to play an increased role in terms of, community and mitigation of COVID-19. Number 2 is that I think there's a bigger picture here in this particular conversation. I think across the world, we've started talking about how do we move from the fact that companies should only be driven to create shareholder value to how companies should play a bigger role in what we call stakeholder capitalism. That companies should be driven not only to take care of shareholders, but also the community around them. So maybe this will also create a bigger conversation around that. And number 3, just as Joanne, I think, has mentioned, that in as much as, Safaricom has, I think a net profit of about 33 billion, and they say that they've lost about 9 billion from, the free transaction service, I think we should not lose the bigger picture that over the last decade, shareholders have invested a lot of money in the company, and the company has pumped a lot of money in their capital expenditure, and and has really good corporate governance system that has now yielded the fruits of what they are receiving. So, let's just not say that Safaricom is doing well. They have a role to mitigate this, while forgetting that the shareholders really pumped in a lot of money that went to the capex that is generating the returns now.
All right, Erastus, let's hear your take. Do you agree with Alex when it comes to market, with the shareholders pumping in money? What is your take?
I think I can agree with him in various points. For example, he has mentioned about the role of Safaricom to the community. I believe that is the CSR, corporate social responsibility. So I think they have a role to play, but also being a capitalist nation, the unilateral decision by the government to come and intervene and maybe try to make them move in a particular direction is not in the best interest of their business model. And also, since they have invested, I think they have a right to protest that decision. And I'm happy that they are moving forward in the discussion with the government, so such that they can get out of the mess.
All right, what about you, Randall?
I'm a firm believer in a free market economy.
Okay.
But because we're going through a pandemic, I think that it is okay for Safaricom to share in the burden of what is going on, because M-Pesa is an essential service within itself. It's something that we need from when you wake up in the morning till when you go home at night. You use M-Pesa a lot. So this is would be good social corporate responsibility, a way of giving back. 9% is just a drop in the bucket. And this is just for a short period of time. So I think we should all share in the pain, Safaricom included.
All right, now stay with me, Randall. Local health officials have been warning of a second wave of the pandemic, looking at what is happening in Europe, where several countries have reinstated lockdowns or partial lockdowns to try to stem infections. What should be the ideal way out for the transaction relief services?
maybe at some point they should reinstate fees, but gradually, maybe drop it from 1,000 to 800, gradually, slowly, as we ease our way out of this pandemic.
All right. And what about Joanne? What do you think should be the ideal way out for transaction relief services?
I think that they should continue with the goodwill that they have done at this particular point. Just like Alex said, I believe we've supported Safaricom for the last many years by using M-Pesa and the main as our main e-commerce platform. So I think they should continue with the goodwill that they have begun until a point at which the pandemic has eased off, and probably we can go back to slowly and business as usual.
Okay. Erastus?
Going forward, I think what should happen should be maybe reducing the pricing in terms of the transaction services. So that one will be a shared responsibility between Safaricom and their users. So I think that is the best way to go, in my opinion.
All right. And finally, Alex, would like to hear what you have to say when it comes to the ideal way forward or the ideal way out for the transaction relief services.
Well, I think I agree with what everyone has said, and maybe just to add is, I really hope this time that we see more innovative services for transferring money, because I still think the transaction fees that are charged by M-Pesa are quite high. So I hope this, post the pandemic, we can start to thinking about that.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like us to take a very quick break, and we shall be back with more.